In 1919, a salesman named Joseph Johnson had an idea that sounds, on the surface, almost embarrassingly simple. What if one wrench handle could fit 10 different sockets? And what if those sockets just snapped on and off? Instead of carrying 50 tools, a mechanic could carry 5 handles and 10 socket heads and cover the same range of fastener sizes. That idea became a company. That company is now worth nearly $5 billion in annual revenue. It has survived the Great Depression, World War II, the collapse of American manufacturing, the rise of offshore production, and the near-total destruction of the American tool brand landscape that it grew up in. And it did it not just by making excellent tools, although it does make excellent tools. It did it by building a system so integrated, so cleverly interlocking, that it has become genuinely, structurally very difficult to compete against. This is the story of Snap-on, 100 years of business strategy hiding inside a red toolbox. Let us start at the beginning, not 1919. A few years earlier, because the problem Johnson was solving was a real one that was getting worse every year. The internal combustion engine arrived in American life in the early 1900s. By the time World War I ended and the 1920s were beginning, automobiles were transitioning from exotic luxury items to mainstream transportation. For middle-class Americans, garages were opening everywhere. Mechanics were in demand. And they had a problem that was getting worse every time a new car model arrived. Every manufacturer used slightly different fasteners, different sizes, different configurations. Every time a mechanic had to work on a new type of vehicle, they potentially needed new tools. The result was toolkits that were enormous, expensive, heavy, and still frequently incomplete for the specific job in front of you. The tool problem was a real operational constraint for professional mechanics, not just an inconvenience. Johnson's interchangeable socket idea solved this directly. Instead of a dedicated wrench for each fastener size, you had a standardized handle and a range of sockets that fit it. The modular logic was immediately obvious to anyone who worked in a garage. You could mix combinations. You could focus your spending on the socket heads you actually used most. You could add to the system incrementally. 5 handles and 10 sockets did not just replace 50 tools. It introduced a different way of thinking about what a toolkit was. The name came from the mechanism. When you fitted a socket to the handle, it snapped into place. Snap-on. The name described exactly what the product did. But here is the part that most tellings of this story underemphasize. Johnson's socket idea was genuinely innovative, but it was not unprecedented. The concept of interchangeable socket heads had been explored before. What made Snap-on into a lasting business rather than a clever product that got absorbed or copied was a second decision, a distribution decision. How do you sell a premium tool to a working mechanic? The obvious answer in 1919 was hardware stores or mail order catalogs. Sears was already selling tools through its famous catalog to a national market. Hardware stores existed in every significant town. If you had a product that professional mechanics needed, you put it on a shelf or in a catalog and let them come to you. Snap-on did not do this. The early Snap-on salesmen went directly to garages. They walked in, pulled out the sample kit, and put the tools directly into the mechanic's hands. Let him try it on an actual fastener on an actual car he was actually working on. Let him feel the mechanism engage, experience the reduction in kit complexity, understand the value proposition through his hands rather than through words on a page or a product behind glass. This was not just a sales tactic. It was a statement about what kind of company Snap-on intended to be, a company that understood its customers better than its customers understood themselves, a company that was willing to invest in the relationship rather than just the transaction. That direct-to-mechanic philosophy scaled over the following decades into what became the iconic Snap-on franchise van. By the mid-20th century, the traveling salesman with his sample case had been replaced by a purpose-built van that was, essentially, a mobile store, stocked with tools, organized by category with demonstration capability built into the vehicle itself. The mechanic did not have to go to the store. The store came to the mechanic's workplace on a schedule every week. Think about what this means from a business design perspective. Snap-on franchisees drive a route. They visit a specific set of garages and shops on a regular schedule. The mechanics at those stops know when the van is coming. They know the person driving it, often for years or even decades. The franchisee knows their customers' names, knows what tools they already have, knows what they have been looking for, knows what they are likely to need based on what kind of work they do. This is not a transaction. This is a relationship. And relationships are much stickier than transactions. By the time a competing brand tries to reach that same mechanic through a retail shelf or an online store, the Snap-on franchisee already has something that cannot be replicated by a shelf position or a website. A human being who shows up in person every week for years. Now let us talk about the tools themselves, because the distribution model would not work if the product did not justify it. And Snap-on tools are genuinely different from most of what you find in a hardware store. The company holds more than 300 patents across its product range. Some of these are genuinely fundamental to the tool, performance that professional mechanics pay premium prices for. The most important of these is the flank drive system, which Snap-on introduced in the 1960s. Here's the engineering problem it solves. A wrench or socket fits over a hex head fastener. When you apply torque, the force has to go somewhere. In a conventional socket, the contact points are at the corners of the hex shape. When a fastener is corroded, slightly damaged, or being torqued at the upper limit of what the socket can apply, that corner contact concentrates stress at the 6 corners of the fastener head. The corners round off. Once a fastener's corners are rounded, it becomes much harder to remove. You have turned a difficult job into a potentially much worse one. The flank drive geometry applies force to the flat faces of the fastener instead of the corners. This distributes the torque load across a much larger surface area and dramatically reduces the tendency for corners to round under high torque. For a professional mechanic working on a corroded exhaust manifold or a seized brake caliper, bolt. This is not a marginal improvement. It is the difference between getting the fastener off and spending the next 3 hours with a drill, an extractor set, and a significant amount of profanity. The flank drive patent has long since expired. Other manufacturers can and do copy the geometry. But copying the geometry and matching the dimensional accuracy of Snap-on's manufacturing are different things. Snap-on maintains manufacturing tolerances on its socket dimensions that are tighter than most competitors bother to achieve, because the customers who use these tools professionally will feel the difference, and the franchisee who sells to them will hear about it if the quality is not consistent. Snap-on manufactures most of its core hand tools in the United States. This is not just marketing. It is a practical quality control decision. Keeping manufacturing close to the engineering and development teams allows faster iteration on quality problems and tighter monitoring of production consistency. It also creates a genuine differentiator in a market where the phrase "made in USA" has become extremely rare for hand tools. The result of this engineering investment is a tool that performs measurably better than cheaper alternatives under exactly the conditions professional mechanics encounter most often: high torque, corroded fasteners, worn hardware, conditions where the cheapest tool in the box fails first. But now we need to talk about money, because the price of Snap-on tools is the first thing everyone mentions when they encounter the brand, and it is not a small gap. A basic Snap-on combination wrench costs somewhere between 5 and 15 times what a comparable Craftsman wrench costs at a hardware store. A Snap-on ratchet will run you 2 to 5 times the price of equivalent tools from competitors at the professional tier. A full Snap-on roll-around toolbox can run $10,000 to $20,000 or more, while a comparable capacity box from other brands might cost a fraction of that. How does Snap-on justify these prices? The answer is not actually the tools are that much better, although they are genuinely better. The answer is a 3-part value proposition that only works because of the distribution system that delivers it. Pillar 1 is quality, which we have already discussed. The flank drive engineering, the manufacturing tolerances, the US production, the 100 patents. These are real, and they matter to professional mechanics who use their tools under demanding conditions every day. But by themselves, they would justify a premium, not a monopoly on professional trust. Pillar 2 is the warranty, and this is where the distribution model creates a competitive advantage that is essentially impossible to replicate. Snap-on's warranty is lifetime. If a Snap-on tool breaks under normal use, it gets replaced. This is not unusual in the tool industry. Craftsman once offered a lifetime warranty. Milwaukee offers a strong warranty. The warranty itself is not the differentiator. What is completely unique about the Snap-on warranty is how it is honored. When a mechanic's Snap-on socket cracks, they do not mail it to a warranty department and wait 3 weeks. They hand it to their franchisee the next Tuesday when the van shows up, and they get a replacement on the spot, often before their coffee gets cold. The franchisee handles the warranty claim paperwork on their end. The mechanic gets their tool back immediately and goes back to work. For a professional mechanic who bills by the hour, downtime is money. A warranty that requires mailing your tool away for 3 weeks is not the same thing as a warranty that replaces it in 5 minutes at your workplace. They are the same word, warranty, but they represent entirely different value propositions. And only the Snap-on model, with its direct franchise relationships and weekly visits, can deliver the second version. No retail chain can do this. No online store can do this. No catalog can do this. Only a person who comes to your workplace every week, knows you by name, and handles your warranty claim personally can do this. And Snap-on built the only system in the tool industry that has ever operated this way at scale. Pillar 3 is credit, and this is the most interesting, most powerful, and most ambivalent element of the entire system. Professional mechanics are not wealthy. They are skilled tradespeople with high hourly value but often limited capital. A fully equipped professional toolkit can easily represent $30,000 to $50,000 in investment in the career. Trajectory of a mechanic often requires adding tools faster than income allows for outright purchases. Snap-on solved this with what the industry calls truck credit. The franchisee is, in effect, a lender. A mechanic can pick up a new tool from the van today and agree to pay for it in small weekly installments when the van comes back. The franchisee tracks the debt, collects payments each week, and extends new credit as old balances are managed. Snap-on Corporate also offers more formal financing programs for larger purchases like toolboxes. The economic logic here is straightforward. A mechanic who cannot afford a $400 ratchet today can absolutely afford $20 per week for 6 months. The tool pays for itself in improved efficiency long before the credit is paid off. The mechanic gets access to professional-grade equipment that makes their work better immediately, rather than waiting until they have saved the full purchase price. This is genuinely beneficial. Many professional mechanics will tell you with complete sincerity that the truck credit system allowed them to build a professional toolkit they could never have assembled any other way. It is the reason many professional mechanics have Snap-on tools rather than cheaper alternatives. Not because they are rich, because the credit made it possible. But here is the part that requires honest analysis. The credit system also creates something else. It creates a relationship of perpetual return. When a mechanic has an outstanding Snap-on balance, they see the van every week. They make a payment. They see the new tools the franchisee has brought. They handle something they have been wanting. They think about the job they're working on and realize this new ratcheting combination wrench would make it easier. They add it to their tab. The old balance goes down a little. The new balance goes up a little. For many professional mechanics, Snap-on Credit is not a short-term financing arrangement that gets paid off and closed. It is a permanent feature of their professional financial life. A recurring relationship with a manageable monthly cost that never quite reaches zero because there is always something new worth adding to the kit. Snap-on does not advertise this aspect of its business model, but it is not hidden either. Mechanics talk about it openly, with varying degrees of affection and self-awareness. "I'll be paying off the truck until I retire," is something you hear in garages, said with a rueful smile rather than genuine resentment. The tools are worth it. The system works. The debt is the cost of access to the system. What Snap-on has built, viewed from the outside with full clarity, is a closed economic ecosystem. Quality tools create genuine professional demand. The van distribution creates personal relationships and physical access. The warranty creates trust and eliminates the downtime cost of tool failure. The credit creates weekly contact and a financial relationship that keeps the mechanic engaged with the brand continuously. Each of these elements reinforces the others. You cannot strip one out without weakening the whole structure. Try to compete with Snap-on at the retail level. You put a tool on a shelf. Maybe it is even as good as Snap-on's. Maybe you price it lower. How does your customer get it warrantied when it breaks? They drive to the store, find the returns desk, wait in line, explain the situation, maybe get a replacement on the spot, and maybe get told to mail it in. How do they finance it if they cannot afford the full purchase price? They put it on a credit card at 20% interest if they have one. How does your salesperson build a personal relationship with them? They don't. Each transaction is isolated. This is why Snap-on's competitive position is not primarily about patent protection or brand loyalty. It is about system design. The system itself is the moat. And building a competing system requires simultaneously replicating the manufacturing quality, the franchise network, the credit infrastructure, and the weekly relationship dynamics. No one has managed to do all four at once, which is why Snap-on's market position in professional hand tools has remained essentially uncontested for a century. Compare this to what happened to Craftsman. Craftsman was, for most of the 20th century, the Snap-on of the American homeowner and weekend mechanic. A genuine lifetime warranty, decent quality, wide availability through Sears stores, and a brand name so trusted that it became synonymous with American tool quality in popular culture. In 2017, Sears sold the Craftsman brand to Stanley Black & Decker for $900 million. Stanley, a massive industrial conglomerate with dozens of tool brands, immediately moved to extract value from the acquisition. Manufacturing moved progressively offshore. Quality consistency dropped. The lifetime warranty technically survived, but became harder to honor in practice, as the retail landscape where Craftsman was sold fragmented and the supply chain became more complex. Today, Craftsman is still sold. It is still a functional tool, but it is no longer what it was. The brand name survived the transaction. The value proposition did not. This is exactly what cannot happen to Snap-on, and the reason is structural. The Snap-on value proposition does not live in a brand, name, or a set of manufacturing blueprints, or even a patents portfolio. It lives in the franchise relationships that have been built between specific franchisees and specific mechanics over specific years in specific regions. You cannot buy those relationships because they are not owned by Snap-on Corporate. They're owned by the franchisees. And even if you bought both Snap-on corporate and the franchise network, you would still have to maintain the quality that the franchise relationships are built on, or those relationships would evaporate. There is one more dimension of this story that deserves serious attention, the cultural one. In professional automotive shops, aviation maintenance facilities, and other technical trades, Snap-on tools function as status markers. A mechanic with a Snap-on roll-around toolbox filled with Snap-on sockets and wrenches and ratchets is making a statement about their professional identity. Not, I am wealthy, but I am serious. I invest in my work. I am a professional and my tools reflect that. This is the same logic that makes a professional chef specify Wusthof knives, or a surgeon have preferences about the instruments their scrub tech sets out. The tools are the physical expression of professional seriousness. And Snap-on, perhaps more than any other tool brand in history, has successfully associated itself with that seriousness in its core market. This cultural position is not accidental, and it is not maintained purely through quality. It is maintained through the franchise relationship. When a young mechanic gets their first job and the Snap-on van shows up, the franchisee is their introduction to that professional culture. The franchise relationship is the mechanism through which the cultural identity is transmitted from generation to generation of mechanics. The van shows up. The franchisee talks to you like a professional. You handle tools that feel like they were made for someone who is serious about their work. And you understand, in a way that no marketing campaign could create, that these tools are the tools serious people use. Now, let us be honest about what Snap-on is not, because a complete analysis requires acknowledging the limits of the story. Snap-on's pricing model is not accessible to everyone who could professionally benefit from their tools. The truck credit system helps, but $20 per week on top of existing credit obligations is not nothing for a starting mechanic. There are mechanics who work their entire careers with good quality, but less expensive tools and do excellent work. The professional value of Snap-on tools is real but not absolute. The credit ecosystem also has genuine costs for some mechanics that the brand's own narrative does not emphasize. Perpetual debt to a single vendor creates a dependency relationship that is not purely benign. A mechanic who owes $4,000 to their Snap-on franchisee has a financial relationship with that person that goes beyond choosing the best tool for a job. These dynamics are widely discussed in professional mechanic communities, with varying perspectives on how to manage them. And the warranty, while genuinely superior in delivery mechanism to any competitor, is still honored through a franchisee whose business health affects their ability to honor it. A franchise that goes out of business or changes hands creates warranty continuity questions that are real, if rare. These are not reasons to dismiss the Snap-on model. They are reasons to understand it fully. The system serves professional mechanics genuinely and extractively simultaneously. It provides real value and creates real dependencies. Like many subscription models, it is easy to get into and designed to be difficult to leave. None of this diminishes the central achievement, which is more than a century of building, and maintaining a genuinely unique business model in an industry that has seen dozens of major brands either destroyed by conglomerate acquisition or gradually hollowed out by offshore manufacturing. Joseph Johnson's idea in 1919 was a better socket wrench. What he and his successors actually built was a system of professional relationships so deeply integrated with the daily working life of American mechanics that it has survived everything the 20th and 21st centuries have thrown at it. The tools snap on. The relationships do not snap off. That is the system of Snap-on, 100 years old, $4.7 billion in revenue, and still showing up at the garage every Tuesday.